Okay, well, here we are at the last full day of this wonderful trip. Um, when I first discovered this opportunity, it was so exciting, and it wasn't working with the rest of my life. And but I kept thinking about it, and it was what they say is a trip of a lifetime. But it is a trip of a lifetime. So even though I was so stressed before I came because there were so many things going on, it's been much more than I ever dreamed it could have been, because it was so. Um, well, China is absolutely amazing. I knew that, but I had no idea how. Uh, how much you can't learn just from pictures and books and reading. You have to experience it, and to have such a supportive environment, with a wonderful leader and teacher like you, Fiona, but also to have a small group of very sympathetic, people who obviously are. I mean, it's a self-selected group. The kind of people who would make the decision to do this are not your average people. I'm surprised that there wouldn't be thousands of people who would think this was a great opportunity, but at least with the 7 of us, I think we're all just very, very appreciative. So I don't know. I mean, the food was incredible. It reveals to me that although I care about food and I grow a lot of my own food and I cook almost all of my food, my husband and I, nevertheless, our cuisine is so simple, relatively speaking, and repetitive. Even though, I boast about how they say you should eat at least 30 different things per week, and I think I eat 30 different things every couple of days. But I ate 50 different things every meal here, so it's just the richness, and that's just an example of the food, but just the respect for craft and care is just I'm so filled with admiration for, I don't want to say the Chinese, how about the human race? That the human race can actually care for things over time, and but it's not fussy. I was talking with Monica about the difference between Japanese and Chinese culture. I used to think it was Japanese culture that spoke to me, but and it does. I love Japanese art and Japanese culture, but I find that the Japanese treatment of things is um, is a kind of fragmentary one. Where they take a fragment of things and they make that fragment into something perfect. It's beautiful. There's no doubt about it. It's beautiful. But what I've taken from studying Chinese painting and now coming to China is that the Chinese worldview, the Chinese philosophy is one that tries to embrace as much as it can. And it's not like it's selecting a fragment and polishing it. No, it's about embracing um, as much as possible, and it's not a celebration of perfection or um, um, a kind of intolerance, which I've been finding myself thinking about a lot, about Western beauty. Western aesthetics has a kind of puritanism about it that I don't really like. In fact, I find it suspicious a bit. That there's something about the Chinese more casual, more accepting, I find, sense of beauty. And of course, with ink painting, that's what's so great about it, because I mean, obviously you master or you try to, uh, acquire skills in using the brush and the ink and the paper. But um, really, the materials manifest themselves, and you have to adjust constantly and be humble to the consequences of the actions, and be reminded that, you know, you can't erase it. All you can do is make the best of it and learn something from what you've just done and take it to the next sort of step. So it becomes like a model of living. And so Fiona had us, which I think was really brilliant, of imagining the culmination or the summation of the trip as being the creation of a bit of a scroll. And I was so intimidated by it because it's a completely new format to me. I mean, not that I haven't seen scrolls, but I've never tried to do one. But since it is a terrific sort of metaphor, like actual physical metaphor for the journey or the path or life itself, right? So perfect thing to do, to have us do, even though my face was red. When I first came back to the room and I was going to start the painting, I just couldn't really get started. I was so just feeling kind of intimidated and thinking that I can't really do it. And especially I thought, well, it's about 4 or 5 feet. So I had an idea of how it's going to start, and then this is going to happen, and that's going to happen. But as I started painting, I realized I was running out of space. So, I had ideas of what to do, but then I realized, oh, I've got to come to a conclusion here. So that was interesting, that it was kind of like things catch up to you, right? And so it was kind of an example of that where it's later than you think, I was, and then I said, oh my goodness, I've got to resolve this. Just like, again, in life, as you get older and time goes faster, and you become also more aware of the end and what you think about it and what you want to do with what you have left, but also how you want to accept it, make peace with it. um, and so the scroll was really about those things. And so I can't say that I'm in as peaceful a place as I tried to make my scroll, but I made it. And so, it's a kind of, it kind of is um, an aid or a support or I don't know what the best word would be for it. Oh, back to this word model, I guess. It's sort of a model, which is another model has a lot of other connotations, but another thing is to say a kind of an attempt at an ideal. I find that we live in a culture in America or in the West where idealism doesn't get much attention any longer. And if you try to push people like, why is it that you don't think in terms of ideals? People are so cynical. So they think, well, why should I talk about ideals? Because ideals are always failed. But that's the nature of ideals. They always fail. That doesn't mean that you don't aspire towards certain things, knowing that you never completely achieve them. That's no reason to say, well, I don't believe in ideals. Forget ideals. I'm a realist, that kind of idea. So, so anyway, I mean, there's so many things I could talk about. Fiona and I like to talk. But it's been a very, very educational, very life affirming, very generous, just, I mean, I was very, very happy, very, very happy, very grateful. And